Yeah, VC's kind of dead.
Really?
Like I said that out loud and I was shocking myself saying that. But here's what I meant by that. With the advent of AI, it's becoming infinitely cheaper to run a startup. It's coming a time when pre-seed investing, the check sizes are going to be like way bigger because the entrepreneurs won't need your 250K. They're revenue positive already. Founders are going to be at a place where they're going to be raising what, 10, 20 million, 30 million.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Demo Day, the podcast for entrepreneurs and venture capitalists where we demystify the culture of joining one of the top accelerator, incubator, or VC programs from around the world. I'm your host, Sean Goldfaden, and on today's show, we'll be interviewing David Yee from Ethos Fund. Without further ado, let's get into Demo Day. David, welcome to another episode of Demo Day.
Nice to be here. You guys have a beautiful office, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Shout out Santa Monica. So, David, I always start the podcast off the same way by just really understanding more of the why. You know, you in particular have such an interesting, career because you've had different, you've been a CEO, you've been an investor, you've been in the Peace Corps. Like there's so much that is layered into kind of your trajectory, but you've chosen to invest your time, your money into startups and help founders. And so, you could be doing anything that you want, but you've chosen to be a venture capitalist. Why VC, and what does it mean to you?
That's a great question. And I'd like to answer it in like two parts, but the most important beginning would be that if you look at my career, everything has been in education. I was an ed tech founder, education founder, Peace Corps. I was an education volunteer. And so, I tell a lot of my LPs, VC is education. That's how I position it very often. And what I mean by that is this. We have two stakeholders, right? We have LPs and then we have our founders. And there are others, but these are our two main stakeholders. And when LPs come to us and entrust their money to us, it's not just to make a lot of money. They want to learn. They want to learn about founders. They want to be a part of the journey. They want to be part of the story. They really, really want to learn. They want to be enlightened. And let's look at the other side of it. Founders, we're early stage VCs. And founders come to us not just because for the money. I mean, there's many, many places to get money these days. They come also to learn. And as a VC, I think my main job, in addition to bringing efficiency to the system between these two stakeholders, is to make sure that there's efficient bridge of learning happening between these two. So there's a theme, right? I'm connecting the dots between my early career to now. I think that has continued on. I think I am first and foremost in the business of education. Yeah, that's one why. Did I answer? Good.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that people feel the most fulfilled and are happiest when they're growing and they're learning and they're seeing progress made. And so to be able to be a part of someone's journey, to, see them at their most vulnerable state when they need the most help, while also being able to help LPs or other venture capitalists find opportunities, you're kind of sitting right at that intersection of growth and of education. And it must feel really exciting to be kind of like the soda straw that brings the two together.
Yeah, I think you get it. It is that liminal space, right? If I may put it out there also just quickly, Sean, is, what they say when we're on our deathbed, everybody wants to be passing on their knowledge. Nobody wants everything that they've gathered just to just die with them. They want to keep passing it on. So the youngest and most fulfilled type of men and women are the ones who are constantly spending time with the youth. They're teaching. They're constantly giving away. It's like a fountain that keeps overflowing, right? I'm just projecting ahead. Like if Jeff Bezos talks about, hey, what will I not regret when I'm 80? You know what? I would not regret if I'm just having a lot of youthful people around me. I'm just constantly passing on my knowledge and wisdom and soaking in theirs, osmosis, right?
Yeah.
That's how you live forever. Yeah.
And how do you define success as a VC? Because obviously there is the financial returns, there is being a part of someone's journey. But like you were saying, when you think of your 80-year-old version of yourself and you say, man, I really lived a life of I was successful. I set out to accomplish something as a venture capitalist, as a stewarder of ideas and money and
Mm.
education. What does success look like to you,
Yeah,
defined by you?
that's actually a great question. Thank you for asking that. So for me, here's the thing. I started this new career, pivoted into venture capital at 40. And that was right when my son was born as well. I had a reflective moment. I had a moment of, it was, you could call it cathartic. It's been an entrepreneur forever. Thought, dang, I hate those guys on the other side. I hated pitching to them. I hated them ignoring me. I had them power tripping on me. Finally, when I had like the big bucks and SoftBank gave me money, they started respecting me, They started like groveling. But that power game to me was just so ugly, right? So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna become a VC so that I'm the VC that hates most VCs. Other VCs, I'm not gonna be like that. I mean, that's part of the reason why I started. But for me, this is a long game, Sean. It's a long game. I'm not in this to just do it for 10 years or 20. I'm trying to do this till I die. I think I'm gonna live to 120. That's a constant theme here. I'm gonna live forever. Somebody's gonna figure out that biohack. And the point is this though. So if I'm gonna do this craft for a long time, how do I get really, really good at it? So to answer the why is this: success to me looks like this. I call it redemptive kind of imagination at its biggest. So I'm not going to build the next Sequoia. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to build the next Kleiner Perkins. Then I'm just another one of those VCs following in other people's footsteps. So how do I, if I'm going to create another firm, how do you create a firm that's just category changing? Well, I was born in America, but with this unique perspective of, because I served in the Peace Corps in China, I thought, you know what? China US story is kind of a failure. Could have gone better. What about what happened with Korea, Japan, America? That's decent. With Southeast Asia, I feel like we have another bite at the apple. We could really, really change and really have a great relationship and really, really do something about the morphology of these two regions. And I feel that we can do that again in Africa, Latin America, many parts of the world. And I'm very US centric because I'm American, right? I believe that US has a special calling to do something great. That's just me. So here's success for me. If redemptively we could change the ecosystem between Southeast Asia and US to a point where literally I've helped define, I'm just one of big cog, like a cog in a big wheel, that the China story doesn't happen between US and Southeast Asia. Now we have true partnership between these two regions, kind of like the way that the US has with other countries in Europe, right?
Yeah.
That can happen. And that happens because we have the right companies collaborating, right? The Apples are building in Vietnam, the Intels are building in Vietnam, things like that.
I'm excited to learn more about the moment that you said, holy shit, like there's something happening. But before we dive right into Ethos and how you got to where you are, bring us back to early days a little. Yeah. Where'd you grow up? Yeah. What were you, what'd you enjoy as a kid? Were you really into school? Were you into sports? Were you into Ninja Turtles, right?
Yeah, right? Leonardo was my favorite guy.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about, growing up, what was life like, family life, and yeah, help people understand what it was like to be a young, elementary school David Yee.
So yeah, my parents had immigrated to the United States around in the 70s. And I had always had an identity crisis, frankly. So, and I think that's not unique to me. Am I Korean? Am I American? What am I? And the reason that was a driving question for me was not because of my school, but because of my parents. At home, I'm speaking Korean. And my mom knew Kung Fu or something. Like, if I dared to speak to her in English, I would get a whooping, right? She was very tough. Because in her mind, she's Korean. She can't speak to me in English. So there's no way she's going to get disconnected from her sons because she can't speak it. So she forced us to keep within her kind of circle of influence. So she's a tough woman. And so there it was. I felt like I was always in between two worlds, this competingness. And this theme goes on, Sean. This happened, and when I ended up choosing a college, I went all the way to Vermont. I wanted to run away from LA and anything that had to do with the Korean influence. I went to Vermont, where it's as white as can be. Vermont. I mean, it was crazy because even the churches I went to in Vermont were like completely white, you know? Whereas in America, it was like, I mean, not America, I call it America. Whereas in LA, it was like multicultural, right? So that was a consistent theme, this competing identity. And then I think what really, really turned me around was when I went to college at Middlebury College in Vermont, I realized people are people, but I thrive in this liminal space. Are you familiar with the term liminal?
No. Expand upon it a little.
So liminal is when you're caught in between 2 points, but it's a transitory point. Think of it as time.
Okay.
So typically people say like being in a cocoon is liminal, right? You're between like a caterpillar and a butterfly. That's liminal space, this cocoon.
Transformation is happening, but
Yes.
it's within a confined space.
Yes. Now imagine always being there though. That's a liminal space. You're always kind of caught in flux. Why? Because you don't feel at home here or there. It's not that you're not these two. You are. But for whatever reason, destiny, the heavens, gods, or chance keeps you in this space that's always caught in between others, And so, me going to law school was a part of that too. I thought I was a mediator. I have to be in between people, help people. And that's where I thrived. Or as even an LSAT tutor, I'm like, you know what? That's not quite lawyer. It's not quite law student and pre-law student. I'm in the middle helping these people. I've always found myself thriving, flourishing in that liminal space. But it didn't take, I didn't know this about me. I just had to grow into it and really came into fruition, I think, when I started my first company, which was a nonprofit called One Asia. It was right after Peace Corps.
Okay.
And I learned that as a founder of a nonprofit, you are a professional beggar. And I sucked at it. I was literally having to beg for money. I had no idea. I was 22, 23. I didn't know what raising money meant. I didn't know that a nonprofit was just a fancy word for, professional begging to get a sustainable business going, right? You're just a tax code, right? You're just not paying taxes. But essentially, you still have to be sustainable business. I didn't know that. I just thought if you have goodwill, people throw you money at you. But here's where the liminalness came in. That nonprofit for me was where I was able to get middle school students in China, middle school students in Japan, middle school students in America to come together and really. So the vision was this. If the Xi Jinpings and Donald Trumps of the future met when they were in middle school as friends, at a summer program, wouldn't the world be a better place? If Xi Jinping and Donald Trump were friends in middle school, the world would be a better place. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to create this space where people are away from their home, but are forced to be at this transition and be comfortable. And that was the beginning of articulating this liminal space concept. And that just carried on forward all the way to every single entrepreneurship I did, all the way into the car accident in 2019 in Shanghai, China, where literally I broke L2, L3 spine. It literally broke my spine, and I was immobile for 6 months. And at that moment, I should have died. The taxi driver, he instantly died on the spot. We were on our way to the airport, Pudong Airport, and we slammed into a stationary yellow truck, and literally he slammed against the windshield. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. I should have died, but I didn't. I had bruises all over my chest as though I had like a seatbelt on, but I didn't have a seatbelt on. So this was miraculous that I was alive. And at that point, I think I had a moment, Sean, lying in bed immobile, thinking, you know what? If I had to do whatever I can do, what should I be doing? Because at the time, I was the head of Asia for ACT and K12.com.
How old were you when you got into the car accident?
This is 2019. So this was like literally, 5-6 years ago. So I was 37, 38.
Wow. So it's so interesting to go through those stages of life, because when you're 20 or 18 you're invincible, and then at 19 and 21 and 23 and 27 and 30 and 30, it's like everything can be taken so quickly. And as you get older, you realize how often that happens, the highs and lows of life and like how you react to those situations.
Yes, yes, yes. The fragility of life is real. But I mean, that's when the whole liminality just really sunk in. So I'm Christian. That's my faith. So while lying in bed, you kind of come to terms with that. You're like, dude, if there is a God and if I am really serious about this, I should really get to know this guy. And so that's when I enrolled in theology school, Fuller.
After the car accident.
After the car accident, Fuller Theological Seminary. And then that's when I began to get the words to describe what's going on. That's when I encountered the word liminal for the first time. Like, I mean, I feel like seminary is like probably what most people don't know, but like seminary isn't what I thought it was. I thought you go to seminary, you read the Bible, and then like you become super conservative, like Christian guy. It's a pretty liberal place, seminaries. Like you learn to connect. It's like MBA, but you push God and Bible into it kind of. But in any case, liminal, I ran into that term to describe what now I call third culture. And that leads into what we do today fully, which is our firm looks for third culture founders. The Ethos is a third culture founder. And what is that? It's our term for, hey, you know what? Culture one. Culture is not just geography and ethnicity. It can be industry. It can be your passion. But you have a culture that you are familiar. This is like your mother, father, home culture. And then there's a second culture, which is what we kind of develop as we go older, right? We go to college, we come into our being, and we have another culture. And when you finally combine these two, you get your third culture. And we look for founders who have come to terms with that third culture because we believe that's where innovation happens. So Steve Jobs was third culture. Elon Musk is third culture. These guys are all third culture. Just every single founder that you can think of that is innovative and really doing groundbreaking things is because their identity is defined not here or here, but in this third space.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think it was Minnie Ingersoll that came on and was talking about like the distance traveled, like what she looks for in founders. It doesn't literally have to be the distance from, here to Southeast Asia, but it's like, how has the journey of your life, how have you essentially transcended through like that first culture and that second, because it's through the trials and the tribulations and the heartaches and the the pain and the suffering that you grow and evolve out of it. And so it reminds me of that concept of like distance traveled.
I love that. Yeah, it is. It's very similar.
Now, leaving LA and going to Vermont, obviously it's so different, but then you ended up back in Chicago and you went to grad school, business and law. Shout out, double.
Boom, boom.
Little flex there.
Yeah.
And, the thing is with all of the guests that we've had on the show that are in their late 30s or early 40s or 50s even, they always talk about how like when they were growing up, entrepreneurship wasn't the sexy thing to do. It wasn't like all of my friends are becoming entrepreneurs. And I could imagine in your household, like, with a self-described mom that's tough, what was that like as far as, because you've really been an entrepreneur almost from the very get, and so like, what was that voice in your head? Were your parents supportive? Did you have to kind of go out on your own and almost like say, hey, I know you want me to do this, but I'm going to do that? What was the transition from first culture to second culture?
Yeah. That's okay. You ask really good questions. Very probing and good. So the thing is my mother, immigrants in some ways are forced to be entrepreneurs. So in some ways, my mother, she's not like a tech entrepreneur.
She's a grinder.
She's a grinder. She is like the tiger mom who also, she ran restaurants. She's a restaurateur. I mean, her first restaurant was a sandwich shop. She sold that to learn how to do sushi and started a Japanese restaurant in LA. And that's how she raised her three boys. I'm the eldest of three sons. My father, being from Korea, conservative, like scholarly background. I mean, I respect the man like crazy, like hell, but he did not know how to be a breadwinner for the family. So that squarely stood on my mother's shoulder. He was there all the time, supporting her and being there as like a good like wingman. Watching that made me think a few things growing up is I didn't see tech entrepreneurship. I mean, I didn't even know who Steve Jobs was. Well, not even in my. I didn't even know what management consulting was, Sean. iBanking, what's that? I only knew what all immigrant parents tell their kids. You have two choices in life. You're gonna be a doctor or a lawyer. Right? You just choose one. So my mom had the same thing. She's like, doctor, lawyer, right? But all along, there was always this thing in my head. I'm like, look, I don't want to be like my dad, but I want to be like my dad as a dad, but I don't want his kind of career. I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be grinding at a restaurant like that. So I guess I have to be a doctor or lawyer, but there's got to be more. But I admired what she was doing too. There's a side of me that was like, oh, she's creating something out of nothing, immense value. She's working very, very hard and be a leader in her community. Why can't I do that? But I can't cook like her. So there was always this thing in the back of my mind about entrepreneurship. And I really liked solving problems a lot. That's how, I figured out how to date a girl behind my parents' back. I had to be entrepreneurial. Tiger Mom would not approve of that. I had to figure out how to get my first tutoring job without my mom figuring it out. I had to figure out a way to be an entrepreneur in some ways because of that parental overarching helicopter way. And I think it was always there. But again, to go back to your question, of course, I wish I had more mentors who saw that and nurtured it. And that's why, I do some of the projects that I do now. My wife and I are very active in helping high school and middle school students really, really groom and nurture their entrepreneurial spirits. But I don't think it was until I got to Middlebury College in Vermont when I got a taste of what entrepreneurship was. I met a guy who started a laundry business. He's like, nobody wants to do laundry. He's just started a laundry business. And I was like, dude, how much money do you make, dude? He's like, yeah, $10,000 a month. I was like, dang, that's a lot of money, bro. So how do we do this, right? And I learned a bit about that. I was like, wow, you basically find a laundromat, who's a Korean guy, the laundry guy, and then this guy figured out how to be the middleman and make a lot of money. And all he had to do was get a truck and just full of dirty clothes, and just deliver. That's all he's doing. And he's not doing it himself. He just hires a bunch of other guys to do it. So this was, I guess, my first foray into taking over someone's business. So it wasn't my business. It was his business. But that got me thinking, I'm like, dude, I could have done this. So it was a creative juice that was just flowing now, right? And then got to Chicago. I took part at law school and business school. I thought, you know what? I don't like class, but I really, really like NVC, the New Venture Challenge. We took part in it. We got second place.
Second place.
Yeah. It was the most thrilling education ever. It was a fast, quick service Indian food truck. And this was when the iPhone just came out-ish. And we were taking advantage of Twitter and everything to really figure out how to get people excited about a food truck in Chicago, because food trucks were illegal at that time. So we were just at the cusp of getting that approval. And we got Kleiner interested. It won. And that was, I think, the apex of me figuring, my educational apex of thinking, that's it. I'm not going back. If there's ever anything that I'm going to do now moving forward, it's always going to be at the world of startups. That's why I ended up going to Wilson Sonsini, doing my summer there, and just kind of stuck in this ecosystem forever now.
And once you got out of school and you started to play in the sandbox of tech and startups, I think, what was it, in 2014 at Lyceum Ventures, was that your first foray into seeing okay, I watched my mom do her restaurant business. I now saw this kid at college doing the laundry business. Was this the first time that you saw the other side of the table? And what was that experience like for you to kind of, in the early days? 2014 is still pretty early.
It's very early. And you know what? I was always I consider myself a late bloomer. I always was a few steps behind, So what I meant by that is despite me working so hard, whether it was mathematics, English, or even, entrepreneurship and tech, I always felt like all the innovation guys were always several years or several steps ahead. And then I learned. There's an advantage and a drawback to it. But to go back at what you said, Lyceum Ventures was me, again, at a liminal space, figuring out how to learn tech in a space that tech was just not sexy, education, right? So what I learned was this. I found so many things happening here. So at the time, adaptive learning in tech was a thing. What that means is that's when GMAT for the first time was not just completely paper test. And they had this format where if you get a question right, they'll give you a harder question. Question wrong, they'll give you an easier question. So the standardized testing itself was designed to be adaptive. This is pre-AI. This was back in 2010, right? So it was just a lot of if-thens, okay? It's fancy if-then chains, like decision trains. And that was revolutionary at the time in education. My buddy at Chicago started a company called PrepMe. And that was all of it. And it got acquired by Hobson's. But PrepMe was what I'm taking. He's ahead. He's very creative. But what I learned was that technology doesn't exist in Asia yet. But EdTech in Asia is like hot. Education Asia, they will hire an English-speaking, high school kid, pay him $70 an hour just to read an English nursery book to their 2-year-old. That's how crazy they're about education out there. So light bulb, thinking, dude, why don't I bring something like that to Asia? And so lo and behold, Lyceum happened. Basically what Lyceum was me convincing every single large edtech player I knew in Korea to come with me to find these type of companies in America. Either invest in them or partner with them or grow them yourself. As this is before Venture Studio. So it was like somehow begin it.
Incubate it.
Yeah. Yes. And so that's how Edu Group happened. That's how Lyceum happened. And that's how we started investing into these education tech players. Yeah.
Now, did you have experiences going back to Asia where it felt like you had a little bit of a safety net? I mean, if I was to just go to Korea tomorrow and try to start, it's like, holy shit, I'm by myself. I don't know anyone. Did you have any sort of support even back then? Or was it a chapter in your life that's like the equivalent to the Peace Corps or to studying abroad, or it's like such a new chapter that you're sort of just like going to Vermont, right?
Yeah. That's a great question. So again, great questions. So Peace Corps really, really helped me break this wall. There's a wall in everyone's head that if you go to another country, you have to learn the language, you have to get to know the people. It's a whole nother network, and oh shit, I don't want to do that. It's much easier to do it at home and my network here. There's a wall. What the Peace Corps taught me was, yes, that wall exists for maybe 2 years. That's a long time, but there's also another advantage. As a foreigner in a country where you are very, very eager to learn their language and you are bringing this personality that's so different from what they're used to, you become a celebrity faster. I kid you not. You can become a celebrity a lot. I made a LinkedIn about this. I could quite feasibly become the Brad Pitt of a country that's just not the United States. If I'm just there playing my cards correctly. Okay, Brad Pitt's a little pushing it, but you get my point, right? Yeah. You can be famous a lot faster. You can draw a lot more capital. Why? You're there. Suddenly you are the guy or gal from the United States in that country who has these connections that in the United States, but that's way better than 90% of the people there.
It feels like he knows something. It's like he knows something we don't know.
Yes.
He must be ahead of us because of the fact that you're already coming from a place that is fostering that sort of ecosystem.
Yes. And they'll give you that street cred. You'll work with the Samsungs and the Ving groups of that country. It's a lot more open. Unfortunately, not as open to the people who are local there because they're all the same rat race, right? You're out of that rat race. So yes, there's a wall, but there's also this amazing launch pad for foreigners in these foreign countries. And so I realized that. So what happened with Korea was, no, I never worked with Koreans in Korea before this, but I knew how to speak the language. And so what I did, I spoke Chinese at the time too, but I thought Korea was easier because mind you, this was around 2009, 2010. China wasn't where it was at the time. The Olympics had just ended, 2008. Mind you, when I was in the Peace Corps in China was poor. This is a China where holy crap, nobody ate at McDonald's because it was too expensive. It was just taxi drivers were like, hey, your family owns 2 cars. Oh my gosh, you must be so rich. You can live off of $100 per month in China and be great.
Wow.
That was the China. That was the Peace Corps China I knew. But so China wasn't a place I was going to go for the ed tech kind of play because their appetite
It wasn't
wasn't
developed enough yet.
exactly. It wasn't where it was. So Korea and Japan was the key. Japan, I was just learning Japanese, so I didn't feel as comfortable. But then at the same time, I think it was at first, luck plays a big part. My first contact in Korea was this guy. It happened to be the founder of Cheongdam Learning, and Cheongdam at that time was just went IPO, and they were just at a buying spree. They were just buying education companies, and they had their eyes set in the U.S. and U.S. education companies, and that's how just things started falling into place.
Wow. And now there was a moment because of the fact that you started out in this fund, and then you also had experience with your nonprofit as a CEO. What was the transition or the shift like for you into your, into Ethos? Like how did the steps lead to where you are today? And how did you see, what other people see as black and white, you see as gray? Like how did you spot this opportunity that made you want to, you said 40 years old, right? Is when you started. Like, what was the precipice that led up to you deciding to put all your eggs into this new basket?
I had started multiple education companies, sold one to, you have it, one of the subsidiaries of Cheongdam Learning, right? It's all relational at that point. All of that led eventually, long story short, to me being head of Asia for ACT.org, the testing company, as well as K12.com. I was serving in both roles at the same time. Your legal knowledge, you can do that. You can be an independent contractor. Oh, wow. I can work for both. So I was literally doing what kids today are doing. I was literally side hustling two businesses. They both knew about it, and having them both pay for my plane tickets to Asia. So it was good. They were both winning. But it was very important. This was what was important. As a head of Asia for K12.com and ACT, I got doors open to Asia that normally wouldn't open. I was eating with the Minister of Education in China and Malaysia and Vietnam. That's when I began to see the ecosystem in Asia. Literally, the biggest education companies, or some of the biggest education companies, were paying my ticket, paying my tuition to learn about Asia and what it's doing with America. That's where I learned, met the import-export guys, saw what the government was doing, understood how to open businesses and operate things between America and Asia, hire people. That was 5 years of me just learning how to just run all that. And then the moment of truth came when I found this AI company in Korea that had just amazing AI. It was a machine learning that, what I told you about, the adaptive learning.
Mm-hmm.
It was an evolution of that. This is what they had created. They had created an AI that, this is before OpenAI was OpenAI, right? OpenAI had existed, it's just not public at the time. They had created an exam AI that within 10 minutes or less, 20 minutes or less, with just 6 to 7 questions, can predict your test score with 98% accuracy. So that test would be, at the time it was TOEIC. TOEIC is a test that people take in foreign countries to prove to US companies that you're fluent in English. But when I saw that, I thought, holy shit, we can apply that to what? SAT, ACT, GMAT, LSAT, MCAT. You know what that means? That finally, the kind of, nobody likes standardized tests, but what if it was more of what we call a formative process? So you don't take one test in 4 to 3 hours. What if you can take it 20 seconds today, 20 seconds then? So it doesn't feel like testing. It's just like a multiple checkup, like a health checkup, right? But those multiple longitudinal data points become your test score. But it's not one test score. It shows your improvement too, right? So it doesn't feel like testing. It just feels like learning. That's possible with this AI. And so pitched the guy, we should do this in the United States. I was at ACT, pitched to ACT saying we should acquire this company. We should do something. Fell through, but it's okay because that opportunity came and then we took that technology and started the company here in the United States. That was the company that ended up raising from SoftBank and all this crazy stuff. But when that company failed, that's when I realized, you know what? We can do this better between Asia and the US, but not China right now. The timing's wrong. Where do we go? Korea, Japan, great, but so saturated. Southeast Asia. Makes a lot of sense. With everything we learned, let's do the liminal connection between these two. Silicon Valley and LA and Boston, these cities, it was a lot of venture capitalists, good money, but why don't we help them create the landing pad so these entrepreneurs can be targets for these VCs, so we can help them land here. Well, we'll start with Southeast Asia, but let's go into the Middle East. So we started Saudi Arabia recently. Let's go to Southeast Asia, Latin America. Let's try to become the landing pad into the United States for all of these amazing entrepreneurs out there. So let's create this liminal space that's really, really cool to be a landing pad. Let's be Ethos. Let's look at the founders' ethos. Let's look for their third culture thinking, because you can't just have somebody who's not third culture thinking come to the United States. And then the US is an immigrant story here. So this can happen. We have something here. We can be the best at this. And so Ethos was born.
Now, when it comes to Ethos in particular, having to do everything yourself is something that you kind of have grown up with. Like, you've had to really, like you said, be an entrepreneur for most of your life. And, you know, all of a sudden you're now starting Ethos, but you have, to my understanding, right, you have a partner or multiple partners even that are involved in it. And so my question is like, what qualities do you look for in partnering for a VC fund? I know, you know, like what are the traits that make a great partner in venture capital?
So Simon Shin is my partner. He's been in communication with your team too. Simon, if you saw him in a room with me, all our LPs, when they first meet us, they're like, wow, the two of you, you're going to make stuff happen. You guys are it. The thing is like that it factor, Simon Cowell calls it, you have the X factor or whatever. I can't do his accent. But I think that thing exists in marriages and partnerships too. You know, they have these theories. You have to find someone has skill sets that are not like you, that are compatible to you. Of course, that's the obvious, right? Yeah, you're looking for someone. If I'm an extrovert, I'm looking for someone who's more introverted in their energy, maybe. If I'm good at math, I'm looking for someone who's more gifted in the literature space. If someone's better at closing, I'm looking for someone who's buzzing. You know, Simon has a product background. I had a sales background. So that was good. Simon is also, I'm just going through the technicalities. Yeah. Simon was very, very focused and methodical and organized in terms of just when it comes to operational management. He's a product guy, right? Whereas I was always about execution. Let's just get things done even if we don't have it ready. Just go. So it was a very good match. And we had worked together at the previous company, when the AI company for education, right? He was my first hire. He was a chief product officer that I hired.
Wow.
So we had 5 years of history already working together. So I knew his quirks as well as his strengths. So those things are obvious. Number one, right? You have to look for the technical compatibilities, right? Is there a compatibility? Is there supplementation? I think, but there's a second factor most partnerships don't think about, and I look for these in our founders too. You have to look at the chemistry, and that comes down to how do they fight? Or how do they make love? Even like, right? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And so Simon and I have got into some tussles and fights, and I understand the buttons. The question is this, is like, can the two of you guys see a bigger third picture? Again, I use that third, but is your goal and your vision bigger than your differences? And is this person able to see that? And always, despite their emotions and dysfunctions, at the end of the day, recalibrate and bring that back to the center. Because, you know, when we're emotional, I can yell, you know, at the moment, we can say anything. But when we go back, whether you're pooping or lying in bed, whatever, does it recalibrate there, right? Simon had that ability. And hopefully I did too. That's why he's, you know, with me. And as long as we had that, we knew that no matter what our disagreements, and we're like thousands of miles apart, we can make this happen. Because we did a rock, paper, scissors, and I don't know, we joke around about this. I lost, you lost. Who lost? Who ended up in Vietnam and who ended up in LA? Because we're both from LA, right? We love LA. This is our home. So yeah, that's what we look for. And we also tell founders that. It's just like, hey, you know what? Look for someone who, no matter how many arguments you get, because arguments are real. You need to disagree. The tension's real. And it's not always emotionally bad.
Right.
You know?
Diamonds come from friction, and
Yes.
like two opposing forces, can make magic happen.
Yep.
What is one thing that you admire about Simon that he may not even know about himself?
I tell him I'm a very word of affirmation guy. So I tell him so many things that, hey, I appreciate this about you. I appreciate this about you. I appreciate this about you. But okay, yeah, there is this one thing. Actually, he probably doesn't know is he'll hate me saying this, but he's a super minimalist. He is. Meaning, I mean, that's a gift, I think. In a day, I pack my days. Like, he will figure out the most minimal way to get by that day.
Mm.
You know, he will just do one thing that day or just two. That's it.
That is admirable, though.
That
For someone
is.
like you or me, that is like go, 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 go. It's like, man, I admire that.
Yeah.
Someone
But I think he thinks that's laziness from my perspective. But it's not. It's not. It's not lazy. From my perspective, that's freaking efficient use of time. And you know how to rest. That's good.
So, raising a VC fund it's really interesting and unique because I think that everyone, or many people, I think a lot that watch this podcast already kind of know what's going on here. But a lot of people that aren't in the industry, I think, resonate with founders looking for money, Shark Tank. It's like, oh yeah, I can picture what that's like. But I don't think a lot of people realize that finding LPs, getting people to invest in you is the same, if not even more difficult, even in today's world with how many VC funds there are. And so what were some of your early strategies to help build like the early relationships with LPs? Because you don't have all of this experience to lean back and fall back on. And so you really had to sell your way in. Were there any specific strategies? Was there any specific stories that you remember of like acquiring your very first LPs?
I would say two things. One is take advantage of your prior relationships and trust and your ability to execute and just make shit happen, right? By the way, I'm sorry if I use the S word too much. It's just,
hey,
it is what it is right now.
You're in the family now. Yeah. You're all good.
And then second, I think you need to be really good at throwing good parties. I don't know if that makes sense. I think that's very important. So here's what. I think there are all these people that trusted us in our previous entrepreneur experiences and they trust our integrity and who we are as a couple, right? Simon and I. And so those people would commit their money. But really, what people really want to get excited about isn't the logic. It's like Vietnam, US, yeah, you guys, it makes sense.
They want to feel it.
Yes, they want to feel it. They want to know there's something more here than just the logic. And you know what? I can't like take them on a romantic date the way I did with my wife. How do you convince a girl like to say yes to you, right? She's got to feel it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we threw Saigon Fest. We threw parties. We threw dinners that are just romantic. Another way,
like
powerful.
Stood out from the typical networking event.
Yes. It wasn't networking. It was dinner. It was what I call the meal theology. Meaning how, again, I'm sorry. Jesus was like really good at throwing parties, that guy, with like 12 like young lads who just were probably on the one hand, horny, right? They were young men, but they put it all aside, their families and whatnot, just to party with this guy. He must have been really fun. He must have thrown something to create a movement. So thinking that, I'm thinking, wow, you know what? How do we create the right buzz? And we call it meal theology, meaning, hey, you know what? First and foremost, what happens at that dining table is so important. So let's not our parties aren't going to be like hundreds of people. Just enough people so that we have good conversation over meals. And so the max we ever invited was 50, ever. But at that time we had multiple hosts, right? There's Simon, there's me, there's Gloria, there's Thomas, there's Emma, there's 5 of us that were hosting. So even if each table had 10 people, we can do this. So at the meal table, you make sure you sit the people down who would normally not talk to each other, but they find extreme value in each other, right? They're like, wow, if someone like this is supporting Ethos, why wouldn't I? But they're not going to talk about whether they support each other or not. They're going to talk about Ethos, obviously, and nobody's going to say bad things about Ethos at that moment because we have our like pizzazz and whatnot. They're going to say good things, but they're all going to walk away with the following. They're going to all say, that meal was super expensive looking and good, but it wasn't. That conversation was amazing. And you know the after party? Man, oh, the next day? That tour? Amazing. That motorcycle ride? Oh, wow. By being a part of these guys, that was like a first time in a lifetime experience. That's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to do more with these guys.
Wow. It's like you put a product journey together for LPs.
Yes.
You know, like they're going to feel this way and then we're going to hit them with the after party, but then we're going to have something waiting and like delivering that experience that kind of, like you said, it like woos them in. It's almost like going on a date, you know, with a girl and you start at the restaurant and then you go to the concert and then after the concert you have a little picnic set up and like I think creating with intentionality, what you called it, meal theology.
Yeah.
I love that. That's incredible. Now, when it comes to like investing in startups, I could imagine that there's a lot of stress and excitement around like we have to raise money, we have to invest in the right sort of portfolio companies, but then also like we have to track them and we got to make sure they're doing a good job and we've got to like, you know, it's like on one side you're pitching, getting more, and then on the other you have to kind of like lock it down. How did you tackle that? You know, given the fact that like you had some experiences, was it hard for you to take on the role of, you know, a partner at a VC fund? And how do you balance investing time into LPs and into your founders while also making sure that you're making money and that like things are on track?
I think a few things for me. I had like a grassroots and a top-down strategy too for this. So Simon and I had a good divide and conquer strategy. So any portfolios that we were kind of half and half. Anything US invested, just because time zone issues, he would mentor and take care of them. Anything out in Asia or Singapore, South, Middle East, I would take care of that conversation. I mean, look, not all founders need a hand-holding, I realized. Sometimes they just want you to back off. It's really important to read that well, because as an entrepreneur, yeah, there were investors that I really jive with, and there are investors I was just like, this is a chore. And so you have to read the room, right? And I think I read the room very quickly, and if not, I get 3 bites at the apple. I just try to see if they really do like to hang out with me, right? And that's important. If not, they'll hear from me at least once a quarter, right? But there are founders who, so I categorize. If there are founders who don't want me hovering over them, that's what they see, but I'm not hovering with that, they'll hear back from me once a quarter. We have those founders. They tend to be very seasoned. This is like their 3rd or 4th, 5th company, and they really don't want us to, and if they do, they'll set up a weekly call. Literally, I have a founder this is his like 3rd, he IPO'd already in the US, and this is a 3rd company, and he's calling me once every 2 weeks. Love that. I'm learning a lot from him too. So these founders, you just let them lead. There's another group of founders who like just appreciate your help, right? And you know they need it. That's natural. Because I mean, they'll call you, you'll call them. They're on my WhatsApp and it's instant, right? By the way, in Asia, Signal is what we use with here, WhatsApp over there. But there is a 3rd type. They need your help, but they don't know that they need it and they're noobs. you know, they think they're them, you know, the 1st type, but they're not. And then the pity is when we find them when like it's too late, you know, it's like, and so we've learned from that. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, before they run out of money and before they like are in a tough spot, we should step in, right? And again, meal theology. You just buy them a lot of food, lure them out with a pizza or the, you know, burger. It's like, hey, come on, let's eat. Let's talk. What's going on? you know?
Yeah.
That's the best bet there. Yeah.
What in that 3rd bucket, if you could surmise the biggest percentage of the pie, what's the blind spot? Like, you know, if you could sit all of them down at the same time, what is a commonality that you see in that 3rd bucket that if they would just splash a little water on their face, like what are they missing? What's the blind spot that's preventing them from getting to that place?
You know, I think, okay, I'm talking about these founders in general who are global founders, right? They all speak English, but they may be building in the US or in Asia. I think taking venture capital money suddenly makes them think that they have to somehow be different as entrepreneurs. Look, me running that laundry company and being a VC-backed company, honestly, the fundamentals shouldn't be that different. But for some reason, first-time founders, I think, sit there overthinking things, developing the product, and they have a master strategy plan in mind when, in fact, you should just think about, how do I make money? How do I solve this problem? Just go. You know what I mean? They should just, sometimes you just sell to find out. I don't care how many meetings you guys have, you're never going to find out you're running in circles, but they do. Another thing is like fundraising strategy. I think they feel like asking for help, like strategize with us, is like an admission of weakness, right? But it's not. So first time fundraising, or second time, let's help. Let's strategize together. We'll back channel for you. Let's figure this out because we're in the same boat now. I say that all the time. We're in the same boat. But so I think a trick, I learned this. Simon and I both learned this from Eric at Hustle Fund. I think he says this well. He says, I don't care if you lose my money. I think founders need to hear that on this side. And we've been saying that a lot lately too. It's like, look, we don't care if you lose the money. As long as we know you went all the way and tried your best. So try all the shit you can try. I don't want you to say, oh, we tried this one thing and it didn't work. And do it all.
Yeah, don't miss the putt in golf by leaving it short.
Yes.
Like
exactly.
Like if you're going to go for it, go for it.
Exactly.
And when you think about the types of founders that you love to invest in, like bring me through the makeup of like, what are the qualities? Because I would imagine, especially today with AI, just taking the world by storm, like you're probably often positioned with a good company and a great, and it's kind of like they look the same, the dynamics are the same, but there's something about that founder that you decide to invest in. What is the differentiator for you? What are the qualities? Yeah. Do you have any frameworks of like when you have two decisions with great opportunities, how do you navigate that?
Okay. Here's our internal process. What we do is we find the founder. Simon likes them and I like them. Then prior to that, we had like a list of questions we send them. So that we call it pre-DD questions. Once we're through with that, they have to talk to each of the GPs. And here's a kind of, I don't know if other firms do this. I know at Lyceum we didn't do this, but we're doing here is the following. After we've both talked to them, but before, we don't talk about that company or that founder with each other. It's completely, we have a policy, don't talk about them. We don't drop even a hint. And it's
like
easy.
when you don't want someone to tell you a TV show, you're like, just like you keep it in your mind, I'll keep it in my mind. Yeah,
yep. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
right?
Right.
Boom. We don't do it. And then once we've spoken, we let each other know we've all spoken with the founder or the team, and then we let it process at least 48 hours. It's a must, because Simon too, he's really cognitive. He's metacognitive about this too. Even the founders you love, there's this inkling of a feeling like for some reason there's something bothering me about him. I don't know what it was. Once you sleep on it and you follow up, it begins to just resolve. You begin to understand why it was bothering you or what it was you're missing. Malcolm Gladwell calls it blink, right? You have this like really quick thinking in the back of your mind. And then we have to support it with data. That's why we need that 48 hours. But long story short, the founders we like, we end up investing in. It's so scary. Both of us come that one momentous IC meeting. And we'll both start with the positives, negatives. It's so scary. Because it's like our notes, he comes from like, let's say left, I'll come from right, but our conclusion's the same. If it is, we invest. If it's not, and one person loves them, then it's kind of like the court of law. This person has to convince the other person why, and give them all the right pointers, and give them however much time you need to figure that out. And we've been pretty good about that. But 90% of all the investment we made, we both agreed. It was just like magic.
What have you learned about going through that process, either good or bad? Because I could imagine that there's a lot of funds that are in a similar position. And sometimes, my partner really wants to do it. He kind of convinced me, and like, let's say it doesn't work out. Like, what have been some of your learnings or your takeaways from running that process?
You know, what I've learned is that humility is so big because at the end of the day, you're not making a bet with your money, right? As a VC, it's not my money. As an angel investor, it was very simple. I like the founder. Enough. Here's my money. Go. There are things I now understand why an IC is necessary. When I was an entrepreneur, I was like, IC, what? That's just bureaucracy. What the heck? Why can't you be more like cool investors who just shoot from the gut and with conviction, But I'm learning something. This isn't your money. You have a bunch of LPs. It's their money. That's very important. You are an investor, but you're not investing with your money. Because of that, it's so important, I think, even when I was angel investing, because you're doing it so emotionally, to be able to see it from multiple angles. And I don't care how objective and then like amazingly smart person you are bringing a lot of baggage to this analysis. And to have more eyes and to have the humility to just listen despite your conviction takes a lot of discipline, actually. And I've learned that. I've learned that even our interns have something amazing to say, and you got to listen. You really have to listen. So I'm trying to really enact, I shouldn't speak. I should be the last person to speak as much as possible.
So we have a lot of listeners on the show that are early in their venture career. They might be an intern. They might be getting their MBA. They might be a junior associate. And I think a lot of them, many are probably either like, I want to start my own fund someday, but some of them are like, I want to be a partner. I like David. I like the team. I want to grow here. What advice do you have, whether it's to your current interns or to interns at another fund that, wink, wink, but like, what do they need to hear about what it takes to rise through the ranks and to become a partner someday? And how do you go from the bottom to the top? What do you look for in someone that starts out at the lowest rung of the team? What are you looking for that says to you, this is going to be a partner of my fund someday?
I know this sounds cliche, but I'm looking for an entrepreneur, right? I don't, I tell people, hey, you can become a VC partner by the traditional management consulting, finance route, or you create your own fund, right? Or you have a successful exit and become a venture partner and then move into like an honorary role of a GP. All the routes there. But for me, and I know Simon would probably agree with me, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur in your thinking? You can't be afraid to make mistakes, right? And if you're at a firm where you're afraid to make mistakes, then, I guess you're managing up a little too much and you're kind of tiptoeing around. That's not good, right? You're never going to, even as a partner, you're not going to be pizzazzful. My point is this, is like, you shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes knowing that you're doing something amazing and totality moving the company forward, the firm forward. Having that confidence takes time to build.
Yeah,
it does. But I encourage interns to build it quick. And to 3 key ways to do that. One is don't kiss anyone's butt. Please don't. Like, people see it. And then the partners who like it, yeah, they tend to not be so cool. They don't care about nurturing you anyways, right? So the point is like, don't be afraid to disagree. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just speak your mind. Don't kiss their butt. Don't kiss anybody's butt. Because why? You're gonna make bad investments. I want you to disagree if you think this is bad. Don't agree with a GP just because it's a GP, right? So that's one is learn to not kiss butt. Learn to be disagreeable is one. 2, you have to find your unique edge in the company. I tell interns this all the time. It's like, what can you do that I can't do? I know. You can go to all these universities and like bring all the deals. You can like throw parties, meal theology it. What do you need? What kind of money do you need from me? You want to run a mini incubator over there? Go do it. Go. Entrepreneurial. But do something I can't do. A 40-year-old guy's going to walk on campus. I'm a creep. He walks on campus. They're cool. She walks on campus. She's awesome. You know what I mean? Do something I can't do and create a niche around that. And then make yourself so invaluable that I'm like, oh my God. Not only is he a like self-motivated initiator, but he's created something of value to the company that I can't do. Second, last but not least, I really mean this is like, look, don't try to get good at what you're not. As an intern, like grow, always grow. But have a very, very solid look in the mirror to say, what's my gift? What's my talent? And if you know what that is, so for example, if you're good at back-end work and portfolio managing, lean into it. You don't have to go like meet a bunch of founders and try to source deals. But if you're really good at sourcing deals and meeting founders and bringing them, go do that. Lean into it. That doesn't mean you don't grow in the other ways, but really lean into these parts, because as a VC fund that is fund one, I'm looking for people who are really, really good at that. Even fund two, I'm realizing that I'm looking for strengths that, I mean, obviously we're training them to grow in other ways, but if you can help me make my life easier by, Mark, I think Cuban said that. I look for people who makes my life easier. Because if you can make my life easier by really leaning into your gift and really taking this off our plates, I'm not going to want to let you go.
Now, a little bit more about Ethos for people that haven't heard of the fund before. Like, what would you say would be like a typical check size? When do you like to come in? Do you like to lead the round? Do you like to be, part of a bigger round? I know education's always been like a core part of what you've done. Has that evolved in your thesis for investing? Tell us a little bit more about like the dynamics and the structure of the team.
Yeah. So check sizes, our sweet spot is $250K.
Okay.
And we don't care to lead or follow, because $250K can mean anything for different companies. Because in Vietnam, that's leading, all right, $250K. Because sometimes we go into deals that are the size is like a $2 million valuation kind of company. Where in the US, it's like pre-seed could be 10 million, 12 million, So we're pre-seed. We like to go in before any other institution invested. And the reason is because we're thinking about companies that are global from day one. Especially from Asia, we want to invest in companies that are going to landing pad into the US. For the US companies, we look at companies that could leverage our Asia connections, right? But that doesn't mean we look at companies that are only Asia, US bent, again, global, third culture, right? Can you take this outside of, you have a unique conviction, and can you take this outside of your terrain? We look for that. That was it, right? That was all your question in terms of check sizes and
check size, and then if there was a specific type of industry that was like the right fit, or even that ones that like light you up and get your team really excited.
We purposely with ed tech we've only done one because we're so critical, because we have that background.
Yeah.
So we're even more critical of it. Having said that, we've done crypto. Because of Simon's crypto background, we're very, not just a few, like 2 to 3. But we've been looking at everything. We're agnostic. We haven't touched any biotech or bio because that's not us. But when it comes to agro-tech, fintech, AI, all of that we touch. And because it's pre-seed stage, again, it's like learning again, right? We're more concerned about the founder. It's like at that stage, an idea is an idea is an idea. And frankly, we in our IC, we have deep tech people. We have all the experts that we bring in. Even our crypto deal, we bring in all the experts that help us see the different angles. There's a very rigorous process actually internally. Our due diligence is, just because of my legal background, is kind of long. But what's most important is the founder. Is this an asshole? That's actually important for us. Because, you don't want to be working with the founder when they're at, Series A or B?
It's 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We look at the founder's ability to execute. And there's really cool ways to test that. You look at how the founder is actually constructing their team. That's actually important too. Because some founders don't understand how to do that, and that's a big red flag. That means you're paying them to learn how to do that. And we're willing to teach them. But then teachability is a thing now, right? In fact, we ended up rejecting a lot of founders because of teachability. That's a big thing. Most founders aren't that teachable. Okay, another way, let's put that, a better way to put that is, most founders don't have a growth mindset. They think they do, but they don't.
They're in that third bucket.
Yeah. A lot of people have fixed mindset, but they don't know. It's kind of weird. Maybe I do and I don't know. Yeah.
When you think about, you were just talking about how like there's some cool ways that you're able to, test for execution. And I think like, again, I would imagine that you see AI for this, AI for that, AI for this. Everyone has their own little wrapper of how they want to kind of spin the project or spin the company. you have any tricks of the trade or anything that you enjoy, like, you and Simon get a laugh out of like kind of watching how people navigate? Maybe you could talk a little bit more about like
Yeah.
how you find your A players.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so obviously we've seen so many AI companies, right? We visited a company called MindPal in Vietnam that was like the forerunner when it came to AI agents. Here's what's funny about all the companies we talk to and we laugh about, Simon and I, is that, you know, we all know AI is just, it's like saying, I'm going to create an app. It's just a technology, right? That's what it is. Especially if we're looking at the kind of founders we are. We're not looking for the next open AI for us. Because again, that's what the Sequoias and Kleiners are doing in the world. What we're looking for is essentially people who are trying to solve a problem and have that redemptive mindset how are they trying to actually improve the ecosystem and change the industry from that perspective? Like help the ecosystem, make the world a better place for our kids, literally. Like how are they doing that? What's funny is that when people confuse that, they think the most important thing about their business is the AI, is the technology. And then you have this founder who's never ran a tech company, right? Not even an engineer. Says, oh, and then we ask them, if there's one thing you would do with our money, $50,000, if we gave you just not even fun money, my money, I'll just give it to you. What's the first thing you're going to do? And they're like, go hire engineers and make tech. Hire engineers from India and do this. I'm sitting there going, but what do you know about tech? It's like, oh, just create it. I love your boldness, but really? That's at the pre-seed stage, everyone is like somehow like tech bent. It's almost like you want to use VC money to kind of make mistakes. But perhaps what's the best thing, and Simon, I always do what's not scalable, what Paul Graham says, right? Just go and figure it out analog first with your own money or your own pizzazz, because that's what I do. I figure it out. And then when there's that kind of, I understand this better, maybe I know a senior engineer I can bring on, or if not, once I have convinced myself to confidently, you know what, I can solve this, and I've solved it. Here's how I'm doing it. Now we need to put in the AI to scale it. That's a different conversation. But most founders don't get that. They somehow think that if a VC doesn't back your innovation, your innovative idea, I see this a lot on LinkedIn and like Twitter and X. If VCs were truly for innovation, then why don't they back my idea? It's really innovative. Because you haven't shown that you can go from 0 to 1. Okay, show that first, please. Because when you have 300 people pitching to you, great ideas, but this one person showed them going from 0 to 1. We have all our founders go from 0 to 1 somehow. Like we had a founder on test flight, 10,000 users in 1 month. That's 0 to 1. That's the difference between a founder you get to fund and back, and they're not just living a dream. They're really, really executing. They've seen suffering. They've been through it, and they're really building. That's who you back, right? And I think that's not unique to just Ethos. You look at founders who can follow through with their kind of promise and words, and honestly, it shows. It shows by like how they went from 0 to not even 1, 0 to 0.0001.
Yeah.
But most founders aren't there. They just create a pitch deck and they're just screaming ideas at you. So then you don't take them seriously.
Well, that's kind of something that I've seen. I joined my first startup in 2012 here in Los Angeles, like right as Silicon Beach was like just starting, and, Mucker Lab and Coloft, and like it was just the early days. And I think that, for a lot, the industry of startups is like, the goal is not to build a business, it's to get to the next round of funding, and that's the whole thing is like, okay, I got my seed round, now we got to get to A, now we got to get to B. And you I think in that world can sometimes lose sight of the problem you're solving and the grit that it takes to solve the problem. And it almost becomes this signal flexing around like, how can I raise more money?
Yeah. I remember the days back. This is when I was at Wilson Sonsini. Literally, you can just come out with a term sheet, but just pitching with an idea.
Yeah.
I remember our attorneys were talking about that, the senior attorneys. But now, at least the founders that we're looking at, they should be building a business, because we're pre-seed stage. And even in, so our fund one, we already have DPI, and And in Southeast Asia, at least, that's where our DPI came from, where we found companies that are literally 40xing and and valuation in less than 2 years. And because of that traction in this kind of economy, they're getting the valuation and they're getting M&A offers already. And so I think that's the key for the whole Asia-US play. You're going to see a lot more M&A type situations and IPOs. So you're looking for the next wave of companies from abroad who are all going to list in America. There's going to be a whole wave of them coming. Yeah, and US VC should be ready for that.
What's a common misconception that you think many American VCs are missing when it comes to Southeast Asia? What's a misconception that people just aren't aware of?
Yeah, Ethan and I talked about this outside. I think in the US we think communist red and democracy, right? And we're like, if it's communist, you can't really do business there. I mean, that makes sense. You can't do it in Cuba, China, it makes sense. But in Southeast Asia, here's the thing. Or Americans might think, Muslims and non-Muslims, things like that. But Southeast Asia is very different. Indonesia has 300 million people. That's almost as much as the United States. That's a predominantly Muslim country, Indonesia. But when you go to Indonesia, you can do business like crazy. Same thing with Malaysia. Malaysia is predominantly Indonesian. It's like Indonesia is a Muslim country. But I've never seen a city like Kuala Lumpur, KL, where a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian, a white guy, and a black guy, and a Chinese guy, we're all working together on a problem to a startup. It's the most multiculturally diverse place you'll see. And truly, it's not sectioned off. They're literally marrying each other, eating each other's food, and just really, really meshing. Southeast Asia is a place where, because unlike, like the East Asia, where there was a dominance of rise of the tigers and dragons, they were left in the shadows a little bit, right? And because of the history of that area, there's a little more meshing going on, a lot more actually. So going back to the whole communist red and not the blue, and then the Muslims and non-Muslim, you can't see it that way. In fact, Indonesia has a lot of activity. Vietnam is communist. You can still invest and make a lot of money. Why? Because Singapore's there. Singapore and Vietnam have a tax treaty where if you own a Singaporean company that has a holding company in Vietnam, wholly owned subsidiary, cash flows easily. Now I don't have a repatriation of cash issue. I can invest in Vietnamese companies, not worry about the money being stuck in a communist country the way it was in China, right? I can literally invest in the Vietnamese companies and take all that money back out. Because of what? The uniqueness of Southeast Asia. You have Vietnam, who has a tax treaty with Singapore. You have an Indonesian, like Indonesia, where it's Muslim, but because of the Singapore arm, you could take money back out. Same thing in the Philippines. It's all these different cultures together, but because of their relationship, you can do business with all of them through what I would call the Singapore route.
The Singapore route. I love that. What market trends are you most excited about? Bring us into your world. What do you think about AI? Bring us into your philosophy on, you close your eyes, you're talking to your 4-year-old, right? When he's 14, 10 years out from now, what kind of future do you see?
Man, okay. I'm gonna can I keep it within the VC? Because I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know what's after AI except quantum computing and whatnot, but here's how I see the VC world changing. I run a thing called Founder Chapel. It's free. It's for all the founders to come, and it's an AMA. And the last Founder Chapel, I found myself telling people, yeah, VC's kind of dead, right?
Really?
I said that out loud, and I was shocking myself saying that. But here's what I meant by that. It's kind of like, Nietzsche saying God is dead. It doesn't really mean it's dead, but here's what it means. I think with the advent of AI, it's becoming infinitely cheaper to run a startup. With that, I think, what Sam Altman talks about, the one-man unicorn and everything. I don't think it's all too crazy. I do think it's coming a time when pre-seed investing, the check sizes are going to be way bigger. Because the entrepreneurs won't need your $250K. They don't need it. They're revenue positive already. I think truly winning founders are going to be at a place where they're going to be raising what 10, 20 million, 30 million.
Because like the software is built, so they need infrastructure, building space, or like
Exactly.
things that are physical. Like, yeah, that's
They
interesting.
don't need more engineer money. They need money for physical. They need more money for true HR, right? So that's the future that's around the corner, in my opinion. And because of that, I think a few things. In the transition period, the large funds are going to suffer. I think the early stage funds are going to be okay because we're figuring things at the liminal stage. But once this locks in, that's when when VC. I mean, there will always, I guess, be pre-seed, but the winning pre-seeds, like the people that are going to be going after those alphas are where the founders are that. They're raising $20-30 million. And by that point, I think, yeah, you have this VC that's kind of like a private equity entity playing. And I do see, what's interesting is I do see, can you imagine like a VC IPOing?
Wow,
I
I've
know.
never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. There's a company, a VC in Korea that's trying to do that, to create an evergreen fund through IPO. And I think that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
You could become the evergreen fund by just having a lot of AUM and then like so much cash reserve. But why not make it public fund, right? IPO. What that would mean is that you have enough fund 1, fund 2, fund 3, fund 4 track record, enough of a brand and reputation that people want to buy your stocks. So how do you get there? So yeah, I think you're going to see that too.
I also could imagine the meal theology coming back of like, just if you're not able to think outside the box and go 0 to 1 on your own VC fund by having a special event or doing the special dinner, or like how you curate real events could, turn into the linchpin of like, this is the most important moat you have, is the ability to like let people have a good time together.
You're right. With more technology, the people element, the emotion buzzing element is going to be way more important.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
And like the value of the like, I would never really normally talk to this dude, but like he's a one-man unicorn. Like the talent of the people will keep growing. And so I could imagine the sort of in-person continuing to evolve and becoming, potentially like a moat for these VC funds.
Yep. I see that. You're right.
What is one book that has completely changed your life?
0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. That's good. People can say it's outdated, but the core thinking, look, you can say a lot of weird things about that man, but his thought expands, really does. And I think most books are written by people who are experts in one thing or another. Peter Thiel is very third culture. He went to law school, ran PayPal, VC. He knew what it was to work with tech companies. So he brings a very unique perspective. If you read that book, I'm sure you have. It's just, he does touch on a lot of important points. And I think I reread that book 4 times so far. And I see myself going back at it because of just the freshness of the way he thinks about something. 0 to 1.
David, this is the last question for you here. If you could give a special shout out to anyone in the world, dead or alive would be nice, that's made a monumental impact, and maybe you've never had the chance to tell them what an important person they were to you growing up or currently today, who's that one person and why are they so important to you?
It would actually be my brother Alfred. Alfred E. Yeah, he is not an entrepreneur. He is the most risk-averse guy in the world. I've wanted to do business with him forever, but he's always ran away from me. He's in Thailand now. It's so funny, right? He works for the US government and he's in Thailand now. Shout out to him because in some ways, his very existence pushed me to be here. It's kind of like if you have somebody who's intensely loud, you want to be quiet, right? Because of him, who he is, I think to set an example, to like try to encourage him, I ran this other way to try to pull him towards the center.
That's amazing. Well, David, this has been so fun. Your energy is palpable. I love hanging out with you. I can't wait to spend more time together, hopefully in a nice meal. Or
Yeah, let's do it. Meal
hopefully in
theology.
Vietnam, right?
You need to come with your family. Let's make it a play date.
I love it. I love it.
I'll wear my cherry shirt.
All right.
Yeah.
David, last question here is just like, where can people find you? What's the best way for those that are, in the space that want to learn more about Ethos, that want to connect with you directly? What's the best way for people to get in contact?
The best way to get in contact with us is our website and our email. It's easy. david@ethos.vc. Very active on LinkedIn too. You just find me on LinkedIn. And by the way, don't DM me though, because there's too much. Email me on LinkedIn. Interact over comments. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, David, thank you again for making it all the way out to Santa Monica. We wish you the safest trip back home. And from everyone watching back home, I'm Sean Goldfaden from Coefficient Labs, and this is Demo Day. Peace, guys.